Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. What if the most radical act of self-love is remembering that you have the innate power to heal, that your nervous system is constantly seeking balance and regulation and trying to create resiliency under every circumstance, that it's possible to heal and that your body's trying to do its very best for you at every turn, even from deep wounds like trying to recover from PTSD or struggling with anxiety or depression. What if the medicine that we've been waiting for is actually buried deep in our psyches? Now, these aren't rhetorical questions or ideas. And for Russell and I, there's some of the things that we love to explore, as you may have noticed in some of our previous episodes. So in this episode, we sit down with Matt Zemon, a researcher, an author, and a bridge between science and the sacred experience of altered states of consciousness. Matt holds a master's degree in psychology and neuroscience from King's College in London, and he's written a few books, Psychedelics for Everyone, Beyond the Trip, and most recently, he's written The Veteran's Guide to Psychedelics, which is a guide built in collaboration with a beautiful project called the Heroic Hearts Project to serve veterans who are navigating the struggles of residual trauma, struggling with identity, coming back into Western culture and society, and looking for transformation, healing, and a sense of wholeness. So today we're talking about how psychedelics can act as catalysts, not shortcuts, but really creating that momentum for movement in the places where maybe you or we or anyone might be feeling stuck. Whether you're struggling with repetitive thinking, PTSD, depression, chronic anxiety, there's many different conditions that psychedelics have been studied now. The studies are coming out more and more, how they can help to bring these different psychological conditions or experiences more into balance and start to make sense of them and change the patterning of our minds and brains. And so we're going deep into source, scene, and setting, and intention and integration, and looking at what are the essential ingredients to create safe and meaningful journeys through altered states of consciousness. Now, we are going deep and high and having a great time in this episode and looking at the spiritual significance of entering on one of these psychedelic trips. I also want to remind you that this week is the last week to get into my 21-day Money, Magic, and Manifestation Challenge, which begins live on November 3rd. And actually on Sunday, November 2nd, we're having our very first bonus live activation call. And this is a gift to you if you're joining early and coming in this week, We are going to move in community. We're going to increase our energy, our embodiment. We're going to release what's no longer serving us so that we can step more fully into our expansion, into a greater sense of abundance, into a nervous system that feels ready to receive more. And I cannot wait to go on this 21-day journey with you. So, whether you've been wondering if psychedelics could be part of your healing, that's not going to happen on our 21-day journey. Or if you just want to listen to this conversation to expand maybe what's possible for you, I'm encouraging you to lean in because we're about to explore where science meets soul, where ego meets surrender, and where healing meets true potential and possibility. And if you want to experience what's possible for yourself, really go into the show notes and come on into this challenge. It's going to be powerful. And I cannot wait to see you inside our private channel and in the course and connect with you and support you along the way. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm here with Russell Case.
Good morning, everyone.
And you have to talk louder because you're away from the mic.
I'm normally like the projection guy, and everyone it's too loud when I talk.
Yeah, but you're speaking very quietly today.
I'm really excited.
How fun is it to do a podcast with a husband and wife team? Oh my goodness, amazing. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about finding our voice in our podcast today.
Right?
Both of us are adult children of alcoholics, and we both have an inner critic that just unleashes on each other when we're in public.
The three of us have that in common. Being an adult child of an alcoholic leads to different behaviors here as adults, and it's fun to unpack that.
Were you pushed or led into a military life?
No, but I think that's interesting that I spent a year working with Heroic Hearts Project on my book, The Veteran's Guide to Psychedelics. And in working with veterans, it was fascinating to see how many of them, I'd imagined going into that project that they had experienced trauma in the military, and they did. But many of them had experienced childhood trauma and didn't have the resources and the support to mitigate some of those traumas early. And then they went to the military and had additional traumas. Yeah, it stacks up. It was a challenge.
That's what I was wondering, if we can talk more about what specific challenges you had. But we had our share of challenges growing up, and I think both of us, coming out of a chaos environment, said we want to discipline ourselves and be disciplined and take on even more abuse. And
so we entered a very strict spiritual community called Ashtanga Yoga, which involved waking up at 3 in the morning to do a 2-hour asana practice and
7-hour,
doing a lot of pranayama and a lot of
all the
meditation
stuff.
And meditation retreats and really going the spiritual route.
Just that I think I had a moment where I asked my dad if I should, like everyone else in my family, join the military, which seemed like the thing to do, or go to college. He just didn't recommend it.
He's a veteran.
Yeah, he's a vet. Yeah, he's a vet.
He directed you along another path.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you had that call, if you had found yourself desiring discipline out of chaos or anything like that.
No, I think for me, probably the biggest desire was peace out of never knowing when an eruption would happen. So that walking on eggshells, and then also not knowing, I was having loving dad a minute ago, and then something happened, and now it's not. Watching the behaviors towards maybe my sister or my grandmother, and then having to play no, let's all get along type of role, and doing that at a very young age. And I think I've carried some of those aversion towards loud noise and anger into my adult life.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I think, a culture of kind of secrecy, and what goes on in the family is not talked about. And I know for me, it was very difficult to speak, actually, at all to anyone in a very public way. And that was something that I've started to develop late in life. But I think psychedelics, and we're going to talk about your book and psychedelics and how it can help people, I think, process some of these traumas and also their past and some of the maybe
inhibitions. Yeah, for example, Harmony is quite inhibited about her personal story, and that's the kind of the magic of the show is our listeners know that I will overshare about every last thing that I've done, and then, wait, did Harmony ever have anything happen to her?
It was an idyllic childhood, yes. Nothing happened, ever.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine. In fact, you may not even mention psychedelics today on the psychedelic episode.
I just mentioned it. Okay, but you have a master's in
That's good, sweet.
Psychedelics for mental health.
Divert away from yourself.
Exactly.
That's good.
I'm good at
it's a master's in psychology and neuroscience of mental health. And then I'm finishing up my doctorate of ministry right now and defending this fall. And then I work with spiritual communities around the country on how to incorporate medical best practices about how do we reduce risk for the participants. And then I work with medical providers who are interested in incorporating spiritual best practices into what they do. So that's kind of the space that I inhabit these days, the intersection of psychedelic spirituality and mental health.
Was that London, Ontario, or London, England?
London, England. It's King's College London is where I did the master's, and then Pacific School of Religion is where I'm doing the doctorate.
How did you end up with that, making that choice? That's quite a big jump across the sea.
It is, and they have a beautiful online, they're a hugely reputable college. They have an online program for this master's. I really wanted a school that was doing research into psychedelics that would allow me to craft my program around psychedelic medicine. And they were fantastic about both those things. They are doing research. They have a whole center for addiction specifically in some of that research, which is fascinating. And then they were very open to, okay, you want to focus on psychedelics for mental health? Let's do that. And we spent a lot of time on ketamine, which is not technically a psychedelic, but it's the only legal option we have here in the States. And then I was able to look also at things like psilocybin, MDMA, DMT, some of the other medicines.
Yeah, and they've been doing a lot of research around the positive effects on depression, anxiety, especially I think with ketamine, which is legal, and as well as MDMA as well. Can you tell us a bit about that?
It's a wild time right now. So I'm going to answer your question, and I want to also give you some context. So to answer your question, yes, there are over 200 academic institutions around the world studying psychedelics. Why are they studying psychedelics? Not because it is a cure for everything, because it breaks repetitive thinking patterns. We all, as we get older, we are pruning our neural pathways, and we literally get stuck in our ways. We start thinking about this or that or the other thing the same way over and over. And sometimes that manifests as feelings of depression or anxiety. Sometimes it manifests as OCD. Sometimes it's substance abuse or use. Sometimes it is I'm overeating, I'm undereating, and workaholism. Those are all behaviors from repetitive thinking patterns. So if there's a potential drug out there that can break repetitive thinking patterns, scientists think, wow, that's interesting. And based on their specialty, they're kind of trying piecing what works and what might work for them and for whatever it is that they're interested in. Now, I say all that, but here's something that's really wildly cool to me. If we look at clinical trials across the whole world over 20 years, maybe 5,000 people have had a psychedelic in a clinical trial. It's not that many. If we look at the state of Oregon here in the United States that has this kind of legal framework, it'll be about 3 years before 20,000 people go through their program. We've had a lot of talk on MDMA, and we might talk about that later in the show. We've had talk about psilocybin becoming legal, and with the different constraints and bottlenecks and the way it would roll out across our country and yours in Canada, it'll be a few years before 100,000 people a year start moving through that program. Last year in America, 8 million people tried psilocybin, the active ingredients in mushrooms, and 2 million people tried LSD. If we take away those who are just doing it from microdosing, roughly 5 million people had a psychedelic experience outside of these legal frameworks. So I bring that up early on in the show as we're going to talk about spirituality, we're going to talk about religious freedom, we're going to talk about finding your voice. It's important to understand the context on how people are truly experiencing psychedelics in America and in Canada today, so that we can talk about how do we all reduce the risk associated with that use.
That's fascinating. And it brings up so much for us that's bewildering to people who are middle-aged Gen Xers who we did what we thought was the majority of our psychedelics in our teens. We had no idea that this was going to come back around to us. And then we would be encouraged and facilitated sessions to do psychedelics for healing. It's an upside down world.
You're so much better equipped, though, in middle age than you are in early teenage years. Wow.
Yeah, you're better equipped. We know much more about who we are, who we think we are as we get older. And many, many, many people are introduced to these medicines as teenagers in what I'd call a non-intentional setting, in a recreational setting.
Mhm.
And I think there needs to be a swim lane for that as well. And today I wanted to rather focus on kind of the best practices and the use in either medical or religious use, or spiritual use, depending on what you want to call it. But I think it's important that we recognize that some people come to a psychedelic with a medical experience, some with a decriminalization or a recreational, and some on a recreational. I'm trying to recreate, I'm trying to understand who I am, trying to get past the stories, I'm trying to find my voice, I'm trying to remember where I came from, to think about where I'm going. And middle age, beyond middle age, those are really great times to do that. What's happening in this next chapter? My kids are leaving, my kids have left. I've had people I'd love die, my parents are aging, or something else has happened. What a beautiful time to explore these bigger questions.
Yeah.
The story that I had heard as a kid about Cary Grant using LSD all the time
You heard this story?
through his 50s and 60s. It's a true story.
Yeah.
And he was really using it in a kind of therapeutic way where he was trying to understand himself. I think for me, I was as well as a teenager, that I was going into it with an intention of recreating a fantasy model that, say, Timothy Leary had set for us, that you want to break through your bounded perceptions and awaken a new reality, a new understanding of reality. And I think for me that ultimately finally resonated with the use of MDMA, where I really felt like I had found my voice as a young adult. And I think Harmony and I share those experiences. She's not going to talk about them, but she and I shared those experiences. And we both went from that into yoga, which is where we thought we were going to reset these habits, which you so beautifully mentioned just a moment ago. And so we did that for 30 years. We did a practice that was supposed to reset negative patterns and really kind of affirmed our body dysmorphia.
I think it's interesting. Sometimes these things work for a while, but then if you're not doing some of that deeper self-exploration, deeper healing work, some of the therapeutic work underneath to really be with maybe your sadness or your
terror.
your terror,
Or both.
or both, or your patterns that you're trying to maybe escape from.
Yeah, stay with that for a minute.
Yeah.
A few things are coming forward for me as just listening to you here.
Yeah.
The first thing I'd love to offer is the notion that psychedelics aren't cures, they're catalysts. So when we take a psychedelic, it's not to fix a problem. It's to allow us to get into a state, a non-ordinary state of being, an altered state, whatever terminology you're comfortable using, where our inner narrator quiets down, where shame, blame, and guilt is reduced, where if we're using something like MDMA, which you just referenced, where we're feeling great love for ourselves and for others, if we're using something like a psilocybin, where we can see and understand the interconnectedness of all things, we can remember that we're not separate and apart from nature, we are nature. And we may look like different waves, but we're part of the same ocean. We can understand these things to be true. We can understand that we are spiritual creatures having a human experience. We can remember all these things. And a spiritual experience does not make a spiritual life. So we have these moments in time where we're using this medicine and we have these beautiful things. We have the awakenings, the insights, the awarenesses, the ahas, the wow, the oh my God. And what do we do with that? And that's the practice. That's the chopping wood and carrying water. That's the how do I bring this level of presence and this level of understanding into doing the dishes and getting along with my spouse and work and family and friends and community. And that's the practice. And I think we all have to find the balance that's right for us. But for me, that has been when people said, oh, you're in the psychedelic space. No, kind of. Psychedelics are a great way to start the conversation, but no, I'm in the spiritual life space. I'm in remembering that we only have one life. There's no such thing as work and life balance. It's just life. And sometimes I make money and sometimes I don't. But it's how do I do what I do that matters.
Yeah, I
We
love
did
that
hear
reframing.
that phrase so much in yoga. People would say that to us, or senior teachers would say that to us. LSD kicks the door in, but then you actually have to then go and do the work. I'm just interested in these parallels that I'm hearing in the work that you've done with veterans who are coming to terms with their trauma, and then the parallels to our yoga community where everyone is bathed in understanding they come out of trauma and are trying to reset.
Well, what I'm really curious about, and it's like to follow what you're saying, is from like a yogic context, I have a whole framework that I bring in of spiritual practices, meditation and breathing and asana, and a whole idea about reality and all being one and the interconnectedness through Buddhist threads and yogic
Mhm.
threads. And so for me, my limited experiences with psychedelics have been like profound, like spiritual kind of union, awakening experiences. And I'm really curious how somebody like a veteran, maybe who doesn't have all of that spiritual background and
What a
context,
great question.
has like what comes from their experience and what comes out of their experience. Because I have practices then to stabilize my nervous system afterwards that I go back to. Whereas somebody who maybe doesn't have that context, where do they go?
Yeah, these are really, really important questions. So let's break what you just said down into kind of the front end, what we call preparation, and then the back end, what we call integration. Many, many, many people come into this work without a mindfulness practice. They don't have maybe the spiritual scaffolding. They don't have the awareness of being aware. They're entering this work because of a specific thing that they're exploring or a specific event in their life that is happening or has happened. And we do our best to give them materials to help prepare. So that some of that looks like, how do you set your intentions? Like, why are you here and why are you here now? And how do you narrow that down into kind of a concrete, small thing? Show me whatever. Show me the root of where this feelings of anxiety come from. Okay, great. I want to understand more about why did my father behave this way, or why did I choose this parent? Part of the preparation is also, let's look at our physical environment. Let's look at what we're eating. Let's look at what we're ingesting with our eyes and our ears and all the different things we consume every day. Those might be foreign concepts to someone, but let's at least start the framework of who's out there that loves you, what in your house can be clean, what is going to be your calm, quiet place post-ceremony that you can go to, who can you talk to about this after ceremony. Thinking about those things in advance makes a big difference to the experience. Part of preparing is also finding your voice of, because with all these practices, there's no right or wrong, there's just what's right for you. So part of it is, okay, I want to go to a religious experience. Amazing. I want to go to medical. That's great for you. I want to go to a spiritual and I want to make sure it's multi-faith. Great. I want to go to a spiritual, make sure it's Christian or it's Jewish, it's Muslim. Amazing. So part of it is, how do you define what are you looking for and how do you go find it? Okay. Then we get into the experience itself. We can skip over that for a moment and go to the integration. Now you're emerging. Oh, wow. I can see we're all connected. Oh, wow. I can see the oneness of all. Oh, wow. I can see that the timeline that I thought I was living is infinitely longer. Oh, wow. I can see that I'm a creative, powerful being. I can see that I'm worthy of love and I don't need to do anything for that. Okay, amazing. Now, where do you go?
Yeah.
Many people go back to faith traditions of origin and now looking at them with new eyes. So there's a Christian psychedelic group called Ligari. There's a Jewish psychedelic group called Shefa. There's a Islamic psychedelic group. There are
That's
Buddhist
amazing.
practices that work
Wow.
with psychedelics. And then there are many, many, many people who choose to go more to the yoga path because they might say, I feel too harmed by institutional religion, but I'm now spiritual and I want to explore spirituality, and yoga is my path. So again, there is no right or wrong. There are many paths up the mountain. What feels right for you? And I think people emerge looking for community, looking for connection, looking to go deeper. And all of those paths are ways to do it. And of course, some of these spiritual communities have their own community, their own practices around that. And that's okay too. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Do you think there's a pull then from experiencing a psychedelic experience that moves you naturally towards a spiritual understanding of life?
For many, I think the answer is yes. And I say that because we can look at the objective, those 5 million people that we talked about a moment ago. We can look at it on Reddit. We can look at the spiritual communities. We can look at my experience and say, oh my gosh, I went from not believing in anything to immediately understanding that, knowing that I'm a spiritual creature having a human experience and knowing that I wanted to have a spiritual life. Immediately, boom, done. First ceremony. But we can also look at those 5,000 clinical trials that we talked about, those studies, those people participants, and we can look at what they're saying coming out of a psilocybin experience at Johns Hopkins, at NYU, at University of California, San Francisco. I mean, study after study, participants are coming out saying, I connected with something bigger than myself. I understood I'm not alone. I understood things in a way that I didn't before. And part of why I'm so eager to get information out there is just to keep reminding people that we need collaboration between science and spirit, because when we're using these tools, whether they're in a lab or in a ceremonial setting, we are unleashing or activating spiritual experiences, and our scientists and doctors, for the most part, don't have any experience in how to deal with that.
That's true.
But conversely, we know more about the brains and bodies and how to keep ourselves safer than we used to, and many of our ceremonial leaders don't have as much experience. So how do we bring these two together? How do we build a bridge between worlds? How do we start connecting these dots so that we can, as Western tribesmen, as North American tribal people, that we can create the psychedelic experiences that make sense for our people? And it's going to look different than what a Shipibo in Peru might do, or a shaman in Siberia, or someone in India or China or Africa is going to do. It's different, and that's okay.
One of the criticisms that I had heard of, say, I grew up in the Midwest and as surrounded by Baptists, and as Abraham Lincoln famously said, a Baptist is someone who hears about a good time and wants to put a stop to it. That was my childhood. I was sitting with a Hindu Vedantin in the city of Mysore in India, and he was saying that as a criticism of the Christian religion and also the Muslim faith was that there was an unfortunate absence of the mystic experience, and that needed to be more present and prevalent to enrich, enliven, and inform the teachings and the doctrines and the leaders of those communities. And in this context, that's such a profound notion to think that there are Christian communities having very present, real, mystic experiences with psychedelics that is informing their love of Christ and then bringing that back to their flock. That's the kind of thing that I didn't grow up with at all.
I don't think many of us grew up with that. And I get really excited about how do we get back to the heart of religion? How do we remind ourselves that these kind of all major religions, they started with someone having a mystical experience and sharing that. And then the people who gathered around them were drawn to that and had their own mystical experiences in many cases. And then somehow between there and now, we lost sight of that. And it became more about how do we instill rules of how we operate as a society versus how do we feel truly connected with God and whatever God looks like or means to you. There's a really interesting study that was just released from Johns Hopkins and NYU with clergy members who had 2 doses of psilocybin. And 96% said it makes them better at their profession. They can remember why they got into it in the first place.
What is considered a dose?
That's also a good question as we go down these paths. Like, what's a dose and how much do you want to take? When we're talking about that kind of dose in a clinical trial, it's the equivalent of 2.5 to 3.5 grams of dried mushrooms would be the equivalent of a golden teacher. So middle of the road strain, about 2.5 to 3.5 is what they're giving in trials. But in ceremonies, that as an example, people could take as low as 1.5 grams and have an experience. And I've seen people take 8 and 9 grams because of how their body reacts or because of what prescriptions or supplements they're taking. So let's back up then with this question and talk about how do we all reduce risk as much as possible if we're going to look at doing this. One of the things we can do is do our own medical intake. So work with either Dr. Ben Malcolm, spiritpharmacist.com, Dr. Emily Kolpa, any one of a number of people who specializes in psychedelic pharmacology, and look at what are our prescriptions, what are our supplements, what's our mental history, how do we react to other drugs, what's our body weight, what's our age, and have them talk to you individually. These are the risks we know about, and these are the risks we think, and this is where you fit in the chain, and then let you make an informed decision about, okay, well, with that information, I want to go ahead and try psilocybin mushrooms. I want to try ayahuasca. I want to try MDMA. I want to try ibogaine or iboga. I want to try ketamine. But the difference in going to an independent person for this medical consult, if your doctor's not qualified, is they're not trying to sell you anything. They're just there to give you information. Everybody else, whether it's a retreat in Jamaica or Mexico or Costa Rica or Peru, or whether it's a underground church or whether it's a underground therapist, at some level, they're trying to fill a seat.
Right.
So I like it when people take an independent step, get the information, decide, okay, I understand the risks associated with this, and I'm comfortable with it. Great.
Yeah.
Off you go. As an adult, I firmly believe that every adult should have the right to put nature in their body, and I prefer them to know what the risks are up front.
Yeah.
I really want to share a recent story that happened to us, but I'm also really curious your own story and what got you here. And like, there's a moment that you could remember coming out of high school, going into college, where you had a profound positive experience and that set you on this path. I don't know if you would like to share that with us.
I'm happy. I mean, well, for me, it's almost the opposite. I lost 4 people very close to me within 5 years, including my dad and my mom. So my mom died when I was 22. She was 49. And my last faith was like buried when we buried her. And I went and just lived. And I lived, but by all external measures, I was a model member of society. I earned money. I took care of my family. I sent them to good schools. I participated in community events, not a lot, but enough. But I was missing stuff. I was lonely. The goalposts kept shifting. And then about 7 years ago, some friends invited me to a guided mushroom experience. And in that very first experience, my world shifted. I reconnected with my mom. She was there. I could feel her and feel from her to me to my kids. I was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. I felt safe and loved, and then incredibly safe and loved, and then realized I don't feel that level of safety and love in my normal life. So what's going on with that? I recognize as being a spiritual creature. I mean, just insight after insight after insight. That's the moment for me that I was like, what am I doing? Why am I working all the time and not spending time with my family? How am I possibly think I'm alone when there's all this beautiful stuff around me? I need to learn more about that. And that sent me down the rabbit hole of the master's, the doctorate, the spiritual communities I work with. It's been a 7-year journey for me, and that's it.
What were you weren't a psychotherapist 7 years ago.
No, I was an entrepreneur. I've done a series of different businesses, mostly in the tech space, some in customer service, just an entrepreneur.
Amazing. I love it.
That's extraordinary. Wow. Wow. I cannot imagine what was going on 7 years ago where someone said to you, we're going to do shrooms. Do you want to come? And then you said yes. How did you say yes?
I have a group of friends who I've been friends with for, 15 years. I mean, we met every month and talked about how do we become better business people? How do we become better parents? How do we become individuals? And they're the ones who took the initiative and did this. And they said, do you want to do this? And I said, no, I don't do drugs. And they said, I know you don't, but you're going to do this one because you love to learn. You get to learn. You love traveling. This is like traveling, and just come on. And and I went in underestimating. I mean, I'd love to say I did everything I tell people to do. I didn't. I underestimated it. I got there and they're like, we're going to make an altar. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I didn't understand. And then 5 grams later, I'm deep into this medicine. I thought I died. I had all these experiences in that first journey. But yeah, it was completely out of character for me. Maybe the more interesting question is, what did my wife think when I came back? And I was like, I don't really want to work anymore, and I want to go back to school. And
are you still married?
I'm still married, 26 years.
Wow.
It sounds like, though, it really put you more in touch with your heart, and which would improve your relationships. I mean, despite saying I don't really want to work anymore.
Absolutely. There's a funny story. At one point, my son was 16, and he said, I want to go to one of your psychedelic retreats. And I was like, because you want to do psychedelics? He said, nope, I just want to see what you're up to. So I got permission for him to come as a helper.
Okay.
Wow.
So his job was to help people to the bathroom, to give them blankets, to refill water bottles.
Yeah.
And at one point, I was deep in my journey, and I opened my eyes, and he's standing right in front of me. And I got to hold him, and I got to feel like our DNA connecting, and I got to say to him, My father died young, and no one gives us an instruction manual on how to be a dad. And I just need you to know I'm doing the best that I can. I love you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And we held each other for a while. Then he went off to help other people, and I went back on my journey. But that evening, when we're all laying and having a little bit of sharing time, he said that he wants to thank this group, this community, because his father has never been more emotionally available. And I was like, oh my God, that is just amazing to hear that and to know that I was able to course correct with time with him on this plane. And yeah, it's been really a beautiful redirection of energy over the last few years.
So powerful.
Well, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. And are you from Chapel Hill?
Grew up in Philadelphia. And then married in New York, lives in Miami, and then here though for 20 years at this point. So basically local at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Philly. Okay. Yeah.
It's a good place to grow up. My sister was here and we had her daughter. She's now, she'll be 22 here next month. We wanted to live near family and my sister was here. So, all right, we moved to North Carolina.
Yeah.
It's a good place to live, I think.
It's a great place to live. I love it here. We have a beautiful community and it's green and lots of farms everywhere. So our farmers markets are amazing. And we're 3.5 hours from the mountains and 2.5 from the beaches. And we have 3 cities and colleges right near us. It's a lovely place to live.
I've heard it's like one of the best places to live in the U.S., but we won't tell people that. Otherwise they'll come.
If you all come on down and visit, you can see it for yourself.
We will.
We have a little bit of a different story from you. That's for sure. Because when we invited a shaman to come and stay with us for a few days and take us on a spiritual journey for our own kind of development, for therapy, for integration. We had set intentions. I wanted to be safe. I think your intention was to seek God.
Yeah.
And so we had very different, things that we wanted to get out of it. And we both got that out of it, which was odd.
That's beautiful. What was the medicine?
We used a Colombian river toad.
The Sonoran desert toad.
Sonoran desert toad.
Bufo alvarius and the 5-MeO. And I assume you inhaled it?
Yes.
You did.
Yeah.
Interesting.
How was that experience for you?
It was amazing. Life-changing. Yeah. Profound.
What changed about your life?
I don't know. I feel a lot more on purpose. I feel like I had this, like, the cellular experience of being experienced, if that makes sense, right?
Makes total sense.
Yeah. And feeling like I was everything and in everything and everything was in me. And there was just that kind of complete everything and nothing all at the same time.
Have you talked about this on the show before?
No.
Okay, let's stick with this and let's slow down for just a moment for your audience who doesn't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah.
So in the world of psychedelics, the medicine that Harmony is referring to is the only non-duality medicine we know of. So what does that mean? It means in every other medicine, there's a subject and an object. It might not be you, but there is a time and a place and a thing. With 5-MeO, whether it's the natural venom of the toad or whether it's a synthetic, there is just, I call it like you dissolve into math. You just become energy and you can feel for a little while. It's a 10 to 20 minute experience typically. There's ways to drag it out, but 10 to 20 minutes is typically. And you just get to have an experience of just what could heaven be like? What does the energy field of the world feel like? What is the energy field of the universe? What is the vibration behind Om?
Yeah.
That can all be felt in a 5-MeO experience. So it's a very powerful experience. It's one that I often caution people to just make sure you're ready, because there are absolutely, you can fly down to Tulum right now and there's 5-MeO places and you'll come off the beach and they'll give you a ceremony and there's a range of outcomes that can happen with that.
Yeah.
And then there are people who have mindfulness practices or have worked kind of their way up and are ready for a 5-MeO experience in a different way, and they can have really beautiful cosmic, God experiences.
Yeah, I would say it was definitely that. It was not gentle in a way. It was
not for you. Okay.
It wasn't a gentle entrance. It was like quite somatic and quite intense. But through that tunnel, there was then union.
There's 3 ways that people typically react to this medicine, again, for your audience.
This is so
kind
interesting.
Of, primal shakers, where like you're having a very somatic movement and you're releasing kind of a kundalini energy. It's just it's popping out of you and vibrating, and that's one way. And you have screamers. Okay, you're coming into this and they have to vocalize. And then you have sitting Buddhists, which is just a blissed out experience of just union. What I have found is like some of the ceremonies that I've participated in, you do a heart opener, like an MDMA or MDA on day 1. Then you do a psilocybin on day 2. Then you do a bufo. And if you do that sequence, it's almost always sitting Buddha. But when you just drop into 5-MeO, you might have these 3 different experiences, and it's all okay. It's just different. So it sounds like it was incredibly profound and beautiful and healing and all of those things.
A bit of a shaker, I'd say.
A shaker? Yeah.
You're a shaker?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did you just do it once?
No.
I did it like
progressively.
Kind of progressively.
Over 2 days.
Like many
you started
times.
Slower and worked your way up.
I would
up
say
and up and up.
10 times.
10? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe
Was
more.
that a Colorado shaman?
No,
it was a Canadian.
Okay, interesting. That's a different way of delivering that medicine that there's some people who are really experimenting with that where people get used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very beautiful because it was like just a little bit and then each time, and it was always very consensual, which was lovely. It was like you always were asking, or not asking, but saying, I'm ready for more. Like, and they always said, it was like checking in after each round. So it was very therapeutic. It felt very safe. The people we were with, I'm related to one of them, so I felt very safe with them as well.
There was an extraordinary amount of prep. That was something that had really impressed me about the experience, because I know that I can, in different medicines, I'll respond quite differently, but also typically. So like THC, I respond in a very paranoid way every time. And psilocybin, it will oscillate between very unified and very paranoid. LSD is almost universally very nice, like this weirdly the softest of the 3 that I've mentioned.
LSD
so far.
is for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
MDMA?
it's
MDMA
very
really
hallucinogenic, but it still feels the softest. MDMA is like the most body conscious and the most loving and the most honest I've ever been. And it felt like a technique that I had learned. How to be MDMA is you set your mindset and then you're back there being honest and being body conscious. So just to say that I wasn't sure what I was in for with this river toad. And they had done so much education and so much research. We did Zoom calls. We talked about our histories. And then they came in and they sat with us for an entire day talking about what this was going to be like and talking about our story. And then got to the experience, and it was so intense, so incredibly intense. But the takeaway was how incredibly safe I felt. Like, this is really just the safest experience I could have had being this intense in its hallucinogenic property.
You just did a master's class in how to reduce risk and how to have positive experiences with this. And you just, I don't know if you did it consciously or unconsciously, but you brought up the 3 things that Johns Hopkins says you pay attention to: a source, set, and setting. So source is, where did your medicine come from? Do you feel it is pure? Do you know it is pure? You went to someone who practices with this medicine regularly, who's an expert in this medicine, and he brought in pure medicine. So you can check that off. Then set is the next thing. That's your mindset. Well, he did preparation. Do you know what this is going to be like? Do you know who's in the room? Are you comfortable with those in the room? Do you understand how we're going to deliver this? Do you understand we're going to do a little bit at a time to make sure you're comfortable? Do you feel safe? Because that's important to you. You're talking about seeing God. Tell me more about that. What is your story behind that? Mindset. Beautiful. And then setting is the third one. Who is in the room with you? So again, you hired an expert guide. So you felt good about that. I love this person, I'm related to this person, and and that feels good, and I feel comfortable. So much of the harm with psychedelics isn't because of a biochemical reaction; it's because of someone behaving inappropriately when someone else is in an altered state. And you checked all those things. These are the same check boxes, whether we're looking at a medical experience, whether we're looking at ceremony, we're looking at retreat, we're looking at underground therapist. Source, set, and setting. And again, not right or wrong. It's what's right for you. as you go through that checklist.
Yeah. I think that's so interesting to think about because I personally find it very hard to trust people. But this, because of the consent, because of exactly what you're saying, like feeling very held in this space, felt very safe. And other times, I often would opt to maybe do my own ceremony alone, which isn't necessarily the best way to go.
Maybe and maybe not. I don't think that's necessarily.
Yeah, I mean it can work,
It
but
can be absolutely beautiful, and you are an experienced traveler, and you do a lot of mindfulness practice, and you're probably, even if you're by yourself, you know how to keep yourself safe within those, where you're not being interrupted by Amazon or kids or stuff.
Exactly.
And we all have to find those balances.
Yeah.
I mean, I even talk about there's ketamine people who will mail you ketamine shots and lozenges, and is that how I would choose to do it? No. And for some people, that's all they can afford. That's all they have. They're in remote areas, and they've got to figure out how to supplement. So we all go through this life trying to figure out how do we balance all of the pressures, the pulls, the things that are stretching us, and find out what's the practice that works for me. And if sometimes that looks like doing it alone, beautiful. And if other times it looks like I want to have a different type of experience, there's a guy named Dr. Stan Groff, and he says, I mean, he goes extreme. If you've ever done like a holotropic breath work,
haven't you done a holotropic breath workshop with him?
I do some holotropic breath work, yeah.
So he has one sitter for every person.
Yeah.
That's about as much intention. And his thesis, though, is that if we don't have someone else there taking care of us, at some level our body knows, and we can only go so deep.
Yeah.
So it's not that having a private experience or by yourself experience is bad. It just might not be as deep as others. And again, we're all different animals.
Can you talk a little bit about, because you have such an extensive knowledge, like the different effects of the psychedelics, different psychedelics? Because I feel like they have a very, I mean, even speaking with our shaman, who's obviously quite well-versed in psychedelics, speak to sort of the energy or the personality of different plants.
The spirit,
and the, like grandfather plants and grandmother plants, and how it creates a different type of experience or journey for somebody who's interacting with that medicine.
I love that. I didn't know, because I wasn't from this world, like how many different types of plants that medicine carriers became familiar with. So we can hear about things like mushrooms and LSD and such, and ayahuasca, use that as an example.
Yeah.
And if we fly to Peru or Costa Rica and go to an ayahuasca center, they're going to work with ayahuasca, but most likely those shaman or maestros, depending on which tradition we're in, they're also going to do dietas with a whole range of other plants that aren't necessarily psychedelic, but they want to be able to call in the energy of X, Y, and Z plant as they're working on you in ceremony. And I think it's just incredible. I think for ease and for your audience who's new to this topic, let's break just a few different categories down. We have the dissociative anesthetic, which is ketamine. So it's called a psychedelic, but it's really not. But for 45 minutes or an hour, you can have a psychedelic-ish experience that can do a lot of things. And studies are showing it does great for depression, anxiety, and some other things. But your body feels very heavy. You have a somatic dropping into what's called the K-hole. You have these vignettes or these scenes that emerge. And then the efficacy is just lighter. It doesn't last as long as other more traditional psychedelics.
Yeah.
We then get into things like heart openers, like MDMA would be the one that most of us knew as younger, ecstasy, Molly. But MDA or sassafras is another one. It's a little bit longer, a little stronger, a little more visual. But these are empathogens, heart openers. We feel great love for ourselves. We feel great love for others. We can tap down shame, blame, and guilt. So why do people want this? On one hand, we have groups like veterans using this. So in their case, if we can remind them that they love themselves and that they love others, and we can tap down that shame, blame, and guilt, they can look back at things that they were involved in and understand without bad meaning, this was my role, this is what I did that moment in time. I see it, I see what I did, I take a responsibility, and I can now move through it. Survivors of sexual trauma, same thing. Yeah. MDMA is very, very powerful.
It was very effective for my mom, and for the same reason.
For the same reasons? Okay. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then it's also really powerful for couples. We get to take this medicine and look at our loved ones and say, oh my God, I love you so much. And when you do this, this is how that makes me feel. And rather than our normal defensive response, we can absorb it.
Yeah.
And we can repeat it back. Oh my God, I love you so much. I've heard you say that, but I didn't hear you say that. And I can do differently because I don't want you to feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really powerful for relationships. And there's a lot of work with that just for that tool. I think then we move into like the interconnectedness of all things. And we have the two main would be psilocybin and LSD, where, okay, I'm part of nature and we're all connected. There's the oneness, there's the unity, there's that feeling. It's very malleable, I think. So psilocybin can act as a heart opener, but it's not traditionally a heart opener.
It has been that for us, though.
Mm-hmm.
So when, as a couple taking psilocybin, it has
in
been,
our own personal ceremony.
It's been very MDMA-like for us. Yep. And it was quite surprising. And I think that might just be because of the thing of being in a relationship.
It could be. And setting plays a huge role, and the music plays a whole role, and the way you're guided through the experience plays a role, and then the people in the room plays a role. And it's two of you in a relationship. Yeah, why not? Why? I mean, you're remembering that we have some kind of soul contract and that we are deeply in love for this long period of time. And
that's exactly how it felt. Was that the way that you just described it? It was remembering that that we are in a soul contract, and for every reason.
Which is amazing to be reminded of, that we all, I mean, especially in long-term relationship, long-term intimate relationship, it's so easy. It's easy for me to fall asleep. It's easy for me to get into just habit and to overlook the beauty and the shared history and all of that. And these medicines help, again, put us in a state where we can remember this is really quite beautiful. And there's a trillion accidents that allow me to be alive and to be with you at this moment in time. And how lucky am I and how lucky are we and on.
Yeah.
There's medicines like ayahuasca, which is it's a stronger in terms of physical reaction. So for people who are frail or on different medical conditions, it's a bit harder for you. It's one that you cannot do. So MDMA is one you cannot do if you're on an antidepressant. Ayahuasca is another one that it's super, super dangerous. Psilocybin you can. For the most part. There's a small percentage of the population, 20-ish%, that the antidepressant blunts the effects of the psilocybin to a point where you can't get past it.
Right.
But ayahuasca can be really dangerous if used incorrectly, and I have seen that a lot of those veterans are sent down to Central and South America where they can experience ayahuasca with these very traditional healers and become one with the plant, to find that it's really, I love watching like the Shipibo healers. They effectively are seeing like a grid line over the person in ceremony, and then they are singing repairs of the matrix.
Yeah.
And that combination is it's beautiful to watch, and it's a powerful medicine. The only other one I think I should talk about for today would be, in Africa, it would be called iboga. That's the root.
Ibogaine.
And here, the synthetic in Canada and in the United States is ibogaine or ibogaine. This one, again, has a traditional use. And the traditional use is kind of cool because they have a kind of a big ceremony where you go on these long trips, 24 hours, 48 hours. And then they have it almost like a communion, like a microdose type of service with the same root. In North America and Central America, it's really effective if you have someone with an opioid challenge. It's one of the few things that we know can really help people who are addicted to heroin come off of it. Up in Canada, there's a gentleman named Gabor Mate, who is a proponent of that. And if you've seen, I think it's Dosed One, he's in there. There's talk about that and Wisdom of Trauma, I believe he also references it.
He's coming to Calgary, and Harmony bought us tickets to go see him.
Oh, he's he's amazing. He's deep in this work, and he's deep in the world of trauma's not what happens to you. It's what happens inside of you because of whatever happened to you.
Yeah.
And how do we get to that root to then move through it? But we can each have the exact same thing happen to us. Impacts us differently. And there's no, again, right or wrong. It's just, this is how trauma has been experienced by you, and how are you going to move through that? So he does great work with that. And then I don't mean to trivialize ibogaine by any stretch. There are veterans groups who work with that. There are other people, sexual survivors, and on. But a lot of really powerful work for opioid disorders. And just a quick disclaimer on that one. That's one of the few psychedelics where there's genuine heart risk. Like you really, if you're going to do it in our culture, you want to have an EKG, you want to be hooked up and monitored. It's a tremendous strain on the body. Psilocybin, much, much less strain.
Right. What about Washuma or San Pedro?
You're right. I left out all the mescaline base. So we have here in North America, we have peyote, which is what the Native American Church has a federal exemption to use.
Right.
Huachuma, San Pedro are just alkaloids from these cactus.
Mm-hmm.
I find them to be, they're beautiful. They're going to be beautiful ceremonies. They're not as much used in therapeutic use as they are in ceremonial. I haven't had as deep of an experience with them as I have with some of the others, and I know other people who love it. It's their favorite medicine.
Mm.
The Huachuma experiences I've had have been all-night prayer circles, which in itself is really cool, where there's a ceremonial leader, and then there are the tobacco carriers, and then there's the fire carriers, and then there's the musicians, and then you're moving around. At one point, you're out at the fire, and you're doing prayers there, and then you're back in the room, and then you've drunk a tea, and then another point, they come around, they put a mound of it on your hand, and you've got to eat it, and it's nasty, and it's dry, and then you're drinking orange juice, and then in the morning, you're waking up, and you're praying to the rising sun. And what's so cool about these all-night prayer circles or the ceremonial uses, oftentimes children are there. So, I mean, not taking the medicine, but as the sun is setting at 10 o'clock, the children are kind of going to bed behind the parents.
Yeah.
And then as you're praying to the rising sun, the kids start to wake up and they make those sounds that kids do.
Oh.
And it's just, and then we kind of move into a group breakfast and it's beautiful. And I love experiencing ceremonies. And it reminds me that the medicine carriers never stopped carrying medicine. They were persecuted, they were prosecuted, they were suppressed by church and state, and they moved forward as medicine people. Why is this important? It's important as we think about how our governments are shaping the laws around this resurgence of psychedelics, and as our culture is shifting our understanding because of those 200 academic institutions and the Michael Pollan books and the Netflix series and on, to remember that if we just open up a medical lane, we are colonizing once again from the people who've carried the medicine. And I'm not saying science shouldn't do exactly what they're doing. It just needs to be an and. We need to have a freedom of religion for people who are using these tools. Going back to the beginning of the conversation, these entheogens. So when we use psychedelics in a spiritual manner, we change the name to entheogen because it's something different than in a medical manner. It's something different than a recreational. Entheogens is how these tools have been used for thousands of years by humans. It's been used in spiritual practice, not in medical, not in recreational. So we just need both lanes to be open for collaboration between science and spirit. And those all-night prayer circles and those really intense ceremonies are just reminders to me of, these people have done beautiful work for a long time. They didn't care that we were in a prohibition in Canada and the United States. They just kept doing what they do.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, to really contextualize it inside of community as well, that it's not, like you're saying, in our westernized kind of culture, we've turned it into something that's a little bit outside of community or outside of society, but in its original context, it was very much a part of community and a part of culture, and there was support systems all around in every direction to help you integrate, to help you through this kind of, journey. And it was a part of life rather than being something that you're doing outside of maybe your normal life.
Well, and this is why integration is so different for us in Canada and the United States as North American tribes people, is because if you live in a Shipibo village and you're all doing as a village ayahuasca, and the next day you're in the village, you're already in community. Yeah. You're not isolated. You're not in your car and in your house and by yourself and hundreds of miles away from your family. So we live in a different world, and that's okay. That's point number one. Point number two on the same thing is, okay, my parents weren't working with plant medicine. I get that. But we don't have to go very far back in all of our lineages before we can find people who were. We know there were witches burned all throughout Europe for their use of plant medicine. We know there were shamans in Siberia. We know in India they were drinking soma. We know in China they had their tools. In Africa we had different psychedelics. And in North America and Central America and South America, we all come from plant medicine backgrounds. Now, it has been suppressed by church and state. When the colonizers came to America and to the Americas, they outlawed it as fast as they could. Does that mean we don't have the right, that we don't have a lineage because the lineage has skipped that we can reclaim? I think we do. I think we all have a psychedelic lineage that we can ask for. And if we can find ways to, again, find religious lanes to open this up with our discussions with our government, I think we have the right to ask for that again.
Yeah.
It's important. And we're not making this up. We're just going back to how these medicines have been used and not accepting that the high priests of our society, the doctors of our society, which are our high priests, are the only ones who know anything. No, not when it comes to spirit.
Yeah.
I think if you spend 40 days in the desert, you're going to have some DMT activation, and you're going to come back from that with a highly sensitive response to your environment.
Yeah. 40 days in the desert, fasting, sleep deprivation. There's all sorts of ways.
Those dark
Epilepsy,
caves.
dark caves. I mean, there's lots and lots of ways that we can generate mystical experiences. And there isn't, as far as I know, any way that's as predictably reliable as these entheogens, as these tools. And that's why the Greeks used them for 2,000 plus years, having a mystery school where Plato and Socrates and Aristotle and
Heraclitus,
Pythagorean were all using these tools.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who, I mean, that's the cradle of Western civilization. We just forgot in our culture.
Yeah. I love bringing that into our awareness. Based on your experience, I have one more question. Why do you think our society's legalized marijuana as a plant medicine, and yet like other types of plant medicine like psilocybin is outlawed?
One step at a time, sweetie.
I think it's one step at a time. But it's also, for the most part, they're very different use cases. So when we talk about cannabis and we talk about recreational cannabis, we talk about people who are, well, it's not biologically addictive, and there's some debate on that. It's certainly behaviorally, and there are people who certainly do cannabis every day. Most psychedelics are non-toxic, non-addictive, behaviorally as well. You're not going to do, and you build up a tolerance in a minute. So if you do psilocybin today, you do it a little bit more tomorrow, day 3, it's not going to have the same effect.
Right.
MDMA, at some point you burn out your receptors and it just doesn't work anymore. It's very different than cannabis. So I think lots of reasons why cannabis was pushed first. But we are seeing in our country, the FDA has given psilocybin breakthrough therapy designation a couple times. We've done phase 3 trials with MDMA, and for political nonsense, it didn't make it through, but it will. In the next year or 2 or 3, we'll see these drugs coming online. And I just hope that while we have a synthetic version available for those who want to experience psilocybin or MDMA in a medical model, we still have the ability to have the use of them in a religious model.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's freedom. Seems like a important primary principle in,
Of consciousness. Like, why, who am I to tell any adult that they can explore their relationship with spirit, their relationship with consciousness, their relationship with their mind, and with nature the way they want to? For the same reason why I don't feel anyone should say you don't have the right to practice that religion. You can't be a Christian, you can't be a Protestant, you can't be a Catholic, you can't be a Jew, you can't be a Muslim, Quaker, Unitarian. We had a religious reformation back 500 years ago where we went from sitting and receiving through an intermediary religious instruction to being allowed to read the Bible. Well, I believe we're in the middle of a religious reformation now. And that this desire, this hunger, this knowing that I too can have a direct experience, and I too can be connected to spirit viscerally, somatically, and I too can have this knowing. It's not the prophets and the people of Revelations are not people from thousands of years ago. It's me and it's you. And I'm allowed to do that. And I think that's what's happening. And I think this is what's happening with our technology. I don't think there's an accident that we have AI coming up while we have this happening.
Yeah.
I think this isn't an accident that we have an overpill situation where people are getting exhausted at, oh my God, we are prescribing younger than we ever had, and we're numbing symptoms, and we have people who are sexually dysfunctioned and lethargy and weight gain and suicidal ideation through the numbing of symptoms, and they're hungry for something else. And that we have at the exact same time of, oh wow, I forgot these tools have been here for me. And they've grown in every continent. They're here. And I think it's an incredible time to be alive. It's an incredible time to do yoga practice, to do mindfulness practice, to connect with spirit. It's an incredible time to use these tools.
Yeah. So beautiful. Thank you so much.
Dr. Zemon, thank you very much for
coming
on.
Doctor, but soon to be.
We're calling it down for you.
Do it. I'm taking it.
And people can find your book, Psychedelics for Everyone, a beginner's guide to these powerful medicines for anxiety, depression, addiction, PTSD, and expanding consciousness.
Beyond the trip.
And beyond the trip.
Yeah, beyond
it's
the
like
trip, the veteran's guide, the beginner's guide. Soon there's going to be a
expert's guide.
we have 2 therapist guides, 2 coaching and therapist editions that you can use alongside the people you're working with. It's kind of fun. That's all available on Amazon. There's Audible books of a couple of them. And then mattzemon.com is my website.
Yeah.
And then I do I do calls for no charge for people who just say, hey, I want to talk about my specific thing. Can you help me think about this? And I'm happy to do those. I love doing those calls because we all have our own reason we're being drawn to these medicines. And if I can help somebody, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you. So amazing.
I'm so glad we had this time today.
I hope you're not inundated with yoga practitioners looking for help.
I have time scheduled for almost every day for random calls from people. So
you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before we go today, I want to remind you that the 21-day Money Magic and Manifestation Challenge begins next week. This is a 3-week journey designed to completely shift your relationship with money and abundance. Each day, you'll receive inspiration, video teachings, journal prompts, rituals, and subconscious tools to help you release old stories, rewire limiting beliefs, and raise your energetic frequency so that wealth begins to flow with more ease. If you've been craving a reset, a way to finally feel safe holding money, to stop undercharging, or break the cycle of a dysfunctional pattern, this challenge is for you. When you sign up, you'll also gain access to the Finding Harmony community, where we gather for meditations, connect with like-minded souls, and share resources that will help to support you in your spiritual and energetic growth. You'll get access to the manifestation activation right away so that you can start shifting your energy before the challenge even begins. If your heart is ready to step into a whole new frequency of wealth, an entirely new timeline, now is your chance. We start next week, and I would love to connect with you inside. The link is in the show notes. Don't delay, head straight there, click on it, and I'll see you next week. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.